British Latino Network production.
Thank you for tuning in to our 5th episode of the British Latino Network podcast. I'm Diego, and today we have a special guest, Mr. Juan Lopez, former infantry soldier, team commander, and section commander of the British Army, and now an educational speaker. We conducted this interview remotely due to current world affairs. We hope you enjoy. Hello everyone, welcome back to another episode of the British Latino Network podcast. I'm Diego, and for those of you who are new around here, we speak to many interesting people from different backgrounds in business, academia, sports, and many other fields. We get to know them, and we share their stories to you, the listener. You can find us on all platforms by searching British Latino Network podcast. Today, I'm very excited. We've got a very special guest with us. His name is Juan Lopez. He's got a very interesting background, and he's got a lot of stuff to tell us that we just want to learn more about, and hopefully you'll enjoy today's episode as much as I'm going to enjoy speaking to him. So, Juan, thank you for coming on. How are you doing?
I'm great, Diego. Thank you for inviting me.
I reached out to you because we've spoken before a bit, and I find your story very interesting. I think there's a lot to learn about in terms of your background and what you've been doing these last few years. And so that's the aim today. We've titled this "Life in the British Army: The Story of a British Latino," which is pretty much your story. And so we just wanna get to know more about you, and hopefully our listeners will appreciate the journey you've been on. So very quickly, Juan, what's your background?
So my background is I'm obviously a Colombian-born. I was born in Turbo, in Antioquia, in Colombia.
Yeah.
And I came to the UK when I was 8 years old, or just before I turned 8.
Yeah.
And I've lived in North London pretty much the rest of my life.
Mm-hmm.
I went to school in St. Thomas More, which is near an area called Wood Green.
Right. Yeah.
And then like at the age of 19, I joined the army.
Yeah.
And I ended up serving for 10 years.
Yeah.
And the last 3 years, I've just dedicated myself to working with young people.
Mm-hmm.
So in a nutshell, that's kind of like my background up until now.
Yeah. Okay. How did you find the transition from obviously moving from Colombia? You came at quite a young age. What do you remember from that period of time?
It was very, I'll be honest with you, it was very confusing because obviously when I started school, I couldn't speak English. So it was hard communicating with other kids, and whilst I was picking up the language, understanding what the teachers were saying was sometimes challenging. I was quite lucky in the fact that I have a younger brother who's a year younger, and me and him used to chill out in the playground at playtime.
Mm-hmm.
So we kept each other company. But yeah, I remember that first year was a little bit daunting.
Mm-hmm.
But I think at that age, I watched a lot of TV as well. So I picked up English quite quickly, and then things got a bit better as we went along.
Yeah. Okay, cool. Yeah, I can see how that could definitely be a challenge in the beginning, and especially it's a massive change coming straight from South America straight to the UK at a young age. It's definitely not an easy thing to understand or even to experience. So
Definitely, yeah.
Okay, so how you said you entered the army at 19. So explain how obviously you arrived to the UK at 8. What was the journey for you to actually get into the army at 19? Talk to us about the steps that eventually led to you joining the army.
Yeah, sure. So I went to school, as I mentioned, in Wood Green, to a secondary school called St. Thomas More.
Yeah.
And during my teenage years, I got to that stage where most of us reach kind of that a stage in our life where we want to be autonomous, where we want to be our own person. We don't want to wear what our mom and dad's buy us anymore. We want to wear our own kind of look. We want to have our own look. We want to have our own haircut, etc. So I think that started happening for me around the age of 13. And then in the search of me looking for who I wanted to become, or deciding who I wanted to become, I started looking around me, and the people that were around me at that point in time, and I started looking really and truly for what success meant. And as I looked around and saw the examples of success, unfortunately, the area where I grew up in, which is in Tottenham, is near Seven Sisters. The role models I had were, let's just say, role models that were not the most positive. So, when I looked at the people that had, the best clothes, the best cars, the money, the pretty girlfriends, it was the people, that were on the street, making money on the street. So, around the age of 14, 15, I kind of started, creating a belief that, that was the way to kind of become successful. When I was at school, and when I used to think about, lawyers or doctors or things like that, that just seemed so unachievable for me, seemed so unrealistic. Whereas, when I stepped out of my doorstep and I looked at the people that were succeeding and I could see succeeding, that looked more realistic. So I dropped out of school at the age of 14. And then from there on, pretty much from 14 to 19, I gave it a go at trying to be successful like the people that I was seeing in my area, relatives as well. And needless to say, there's a lots of ups and downs in that kind of life. And I reached a point where the difficulties and the challenges, became a reality. The risk of the threat of violence and the risk of incarceration, with a whole host of other kind of problems and things that come with that lifestyle, really got on top of me. And at the age of 19, I had my first daughter. And at that time, my partner kind of gave me an ultimatum, and she kind of asked me, to look for a way that I could actually provide for our new family. And if I wasn't able to do that through positive means, then, she didn't want to be part of all the stuff I was involved in at that time, which is quite understandable. And as during that 6-month period, there was a lot of pressure that I found myself in, and the fact that I was, I had some trouble with the law, and I had some ongoing court cases. It all kind of boiled down to the point where I remember this one clear afternoon, I went to an appointment with a solicitor, and they didn't give me good news. They said that the case that I was involved in wasn't looking positive. And unless I could show to the judge that I was doing something drastically different to what I'd been doing, then incarceration was a reality. So that afternoon I went to my younger brother's house, and I remember speaking to him, and it was one of those points in life where I just felt lost. I felt really lost. I felt hopeless and very desperate. And I think it was one of the few times in my life where I allowed myself to cry. And at that point, my brother just made a suggestion, and he said, look, you're involved in all these things, you're constantly fighting, so you're always involved in violence, you're an active guy. Why don't you just go to the army? They're going to give you a rifle, you're going to go fight the Taliban, it's legal. And that way you can get out of all this stuff that you're involved in. You can provide for your family. It pretty much ticks all the boxes for fixing your situation. And when he first mentioned it, I didn't really accept that suggestion. For me, the army just seemed like like it was similar to the police, and
Yeah.
that mindset I was in just kind of clashed with that idea.
Yeah.
But I remember, as the weeks went on, the pressure started building, and then I just thought one day, I've got nothing to lose now, and I turned up at a careers office in Tottenham Court Road.
Yeah.
And it was a bit of a funny experience because I walked in, and I remember going up, I walked in and there was like 3 desks, and there was one for the Army, one for the Navy, one for the Air Force.
Right.
And I thought, oh my God, what am I going to do here? So I went up to the Army desk and I said, look, I want to join the Army.
Yeah.
And I remember that at that point, the soldier there, he was like, well, okay, so what do you want to be? What do you want to do? And I said, oh, I want to be a soldier.
Yeah.
And he kind of laughed a little bit. And then he said, okay, what kind of soldier?
Yeah.
And I remember thinking, oh, how many soldiers can there be? In my head, I just thought soldiers it's just someone with a rifle, you just go fight wars and you do. And then he kind of said, okay, you know what, let me make this a bit easy for you. What qualifications do you have? So obviously I told him I was a school dropout, so didn't have GCSEs or no qualifications.
Yeah.
He asked me if I had any work experience, and up until that point, obviously I had never worked. So
Yeah.
I said no. So he said, look, there's not many options for you in that case. And he said, more than likely, my suggestion is you go to the infantry, which is kind of like frontline soldier. And I thought, I said, look, that's fine. How soon can I get in? So he told me, he just said, look, I can get you in 2 months with the Royal Regiment of Fusiliers.
Yeah.
And I pretty much just said, okay, where do I sign? And then the rest is history, 2 months later, I did find myself at the gates of the Infantry Training Centre in Catterick, which is in North Yorkshire. And, it was another experience that was, it was very different from anything I had ever done. So, that was kind of the journey that led up to me joining the Army.
An incredible lead up. How did you feel though, like when you were actually, because obviously, once you signed up, in hindsight, you obviously you've gone through the experience now, you've got the years of experience of being in battle and doing all of these duties. But when you were doing that, when you actually signing up, was it a case of just, let me just sign up? Or was there like a sense of a fear or something, thinking, because front line is front line. there's nowhere to hide basically. So how did you feel about that?
You know what? I think my situation was so desperate. I'll be honest.
Yeah.
My situation was so desperate that I had more. It was more of a sense of relief to just be able to get away from everything I was in. So I never really thought it too hard. I just saw it as like, whatever it turns out to be, it cannot be worse than what I'm living through right now.
Right.
So that kind of took away the thought of it. Don't get me wrong. Once I joined, then I actually started training, and the reality of what I had got myself into hit home. Then very quickly seemed daunting and overwhelming, and sometimes I questioned whether I was actually going to be able to make it, because it's challenging. Obviously, the transition of going from a civilian to a trained soldier, especially in my case, because everything that the Army stands for, the core values and the beliefs and the ethics, I was the total opposite of that because of the environment that I came from. Growing up where I did and doing the things I did. For example, things like discipline and respect, which are 2 of the core values that the Army instills in you from day one. There were things that I was kind of lacking.
Yeah.
So when you fail the core values, the Army has obviously ways of instilling it into you.
Yeah.
And I'm sure many of us have seen those films, the Army films, and the films from America and things like that. And sometimes they're not too far off the kind of punishments that you get.
So
and I remember
eventually you learn.
Trust me, my man, I did. I have to admit, I learned the hard way. There were many evenings I had to stand out in the rain for like 2 hours just
Wow.
seen through what they call a show parade.
Yeah.
So you see, when you kind of fail discipline in some form,
Yeah.
they tell you to come back at 6 in the evening, and
Yeah.
your uniform has to be immaculate. You have to have your notebook and pen. You have to have everything, perfect. And
Mhm.
if they pick up like some kind of fault, or like maybe one of your pockets is not done up, or there's a bit of thread coming out of your collar or something like that, then they
Yeah.
tell you to wait there until 8.
Wow.
So I had quite a few of those,
Yeah.
definitely.
Wow.
But yeah, you that kind of stuff teaches you. Once you experience that a few times, you kind of start kind of realizing that you need to get with the program. You need to start disciplining yourself and turning up at the right time with the right equipment, that
Mhm.
kind of stuff. So yeah.
Yeah. What were your impressions of your first week when you arrived?
Absolute confusion.
Yeah.
I just remember, we got told, from as soon as we got into the training center,
Yeah.
we were told, right, no one walks around here by themselves. You have to walk around in a squad. And for the first 6 weeks, you get marched around by your instructors around the camp.
Right.
So I just remember they teach you to get into 3 ranks, which is, if you imagine, it's like 3 files.
Mm-hmm.
And they just march you around. And I remember just the first week I was just getting marched around all these places, and I remember signing hundreds of documents, or what felt like hundreds of documents, signing new wills,
Yeah.
insurances, life policies, all these waivers, and I don't know, half of the things I was signing, and getting issued uniform, getting issued all sorts of things. And I was like a deer in headlights. I was just like, oh my God, well, okay. And I just remember walking from one place to another, listening to one brief, listening to another brief, lessons and things like that. So it was overwhelming.
Why did they just a question, like, why did they ask you guys to walk in the squads?
That's how that's how discipline is instilled. You walk. It's called like a formed body of men.
Right.
So I mean, now knowing what I know is to do with legacy. The legacy of like historic military fighting. Before they used to be in ranks, like when they used to fight with spears, and then when they used to fight with muskets. So they used to be in ranks, so that one rank would attack. Then as soon as that rank will kind of like do its job, then the new rank will come forward and then continue the battle in a new rank. And then that kind of became the way that a body of men would kind of come together and maneuver around the battlefield in a disciplined manner, and in a way that ensured that the battle was won. So that's kind of like the history of being in ranks. But then obviously now that way of fighting is obsolete. So now it's just used to kind of instill that discipline and the team cohesion. When you march, you'll have to be in step. And so it does serve its purpose.
Okay.
So yeah, that's kind of like where it all comes from.
Okay, good. And how did you find the change from London to North Yorkshire?
Very different. So as you know, London is a multicultural city, and we've got huge amounts of diversity here. We've probably got representation from the entire planet, I would say.
Yeah.
And then the part of Yorkshire where I went to is very traditionally British.
Yeah.
So the only foreign or ethnic people that you would see were very obviously and clearly associated with the army.
Yeah.
All the locals were traditional Yorkshire men.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember it was very, very surreal, being in an environment where you hardly saw, people from other ethnicities.
Yeah.
So yeah, that was one of the most kind of striking things about that situation.
And how did you feel? How did you find that like integrating, because obviously sometimes it can be quite easier, or you can feel more comfortable in when you integrate with groups that are perhaps maybe more familiar or similar to you, or there's more diversity. Did you find that it, at some point, limited, or you sort of felt a bit weird of like, how do I actually integrate here in terms of, did you find that?
So yeah, it was a challenge. It was a challenge. So the platoon. So the platoon is like the group that you train with,
Right.
and the platoon is divided into sections, and you've got 3 sections
Yeah.
of like 10 to 12 guys. But the platoon that I was with was predominantly very British. A lot of English guys. I think altogether there was about 4 or 5 of us that were not white British males,
Right.
and
Was that out of the platoon? Out of the
out of the whole platoon, yes. So the
Right.
platoon was about like 36, 38
Right.
young men,
Yeah.
and it was challenging. But I mean, this is one of the things that is that served me well. The fact that obviously I'm from Colombian heritage, and when I came to the UK, and I moved to Tottenham, the fact that um, I grew up with like a very diverse set of friends. I had Turkish friends, I had Jamaican friends, I had friends from loads of different places. It helped me to learn how to kind of gauge different cultures, gauge different people, and one of the things I remember from a young age, and it's always stuck with me, is one of my older cousins said, we have to be like social chameleons.
Yeah.
And it's almost like, almost like mirror people. So, if a Jamaican guy talks to you this way, you talk back to him the same way he's talking to you. If a Turkish guy talks to you this, so that's something that I learned how to do from a very young age, to kind of mirror people. Obviously, when I joined the army, it was very different because the way I spoke, and some of the guys that I work with have never heard of Colombia. They didn't even know what Colombia was. So for them it was very odd, but I was quite lucky that I was kind of sat in the middle. So I was kind of not on one side, not on the other side. I've always been kind of like on the middle, and I think that's one of the benefits of being a Latino. You're not like on, because the way they used to see is that you were either Commonwealth, which are all the guys that are from Africa and Caribbean, or you were British, white British. And being Colombian, I was in a unique position where I wasn't seen as Commonwealth because obviously of the way I look, but obviously I wasn't white British, so I was kind of like stuck in the middle in between. So that was one of the things that played to my advantage, and it helped me kind of integrate and get along with everyone in my platoon.
Yeah. Do you remember any were there like any sort of initiations or stuff that you remember from your time when you first started off that you
Yeah. There was this initiation I had. So after you finish training, you join your battalion. So you go to your what's known as your unit.
Yeah.
And I remember turning up, and the first week I was just getting walked around the whole kind of camp, getting shown where the medical center was, where the canteen was, where the quartermasters was, etc. And then after that kind of week, you get put into your block with your company and your platoon lines. And I remember then one afternoon there was like 6 of us that joined at that same week. And one afternoon, one of the corporals came out and said, "Right, all the new guys come downstairs." So we all kind of run downstairs thinking it's something to do with work. And then we just see all these guys just drinking beer outside, and we're like, okay, what's going on here? And then they're like, right, it's an initiate. It's time to initiate you guys into the company, into the platoon. And then they call, I can't remember what the actual name is flame. It's called flaming asses. And what they do is that you need to get in your boxer shorts, and they get a toilet roll.
Right.
and they kind of stuff toilet roll on your, like behind, the
Yeah.
back of your boxer shorts, and then they leave kind of like about 2 meters of toilet roll out, and then they set it on fire, and you have to run, you have to down a can of beer.
Yeah.
You have to run round the block,
Yeah.
which is like, let's say, like about 400 meters.
Yeah.
And then you have to come back, just in time before the burning toilet paper gets up to your backside.
Yeah.
So yeah, there was that, and they put you to race against someone else that's new.
Right.
So yeah, that was my initiation. I mean, there's loads of different initiations. My one is not the worst. So,
Right.
seeing it in hindsight now, I'm actually, I consider myself quite fortunate that that's the one that I had to do. So, but yeah, it's a good laugh, definitely.
Yeah. You've obviously seen your fair share of initiations. Which would you say is
Oh,
probably the worst you've seen?
I've seen some. There's some that, yeah, sometimes I questioned. I had to question things, and I thought, wow, this is now taking it, to a whole new level. There's one called Goblet of Fire,
Right.
and
Seems to be a lot of fire.
for some reason, yeah, I think these guys were big fans of fire. The guys in my platoon.
Yeah.
But yeah, Goblet of Fire is like where they just mix as many different type of alcoholic drinks as they can, and then they've got to do like forfeits, and every time they lose a forfeit, then you have to scoop a shot out from this bucket.
Yeah.
But then as the night goes along, and it gets quite messy practically. I'm not going to go into the details of it, but let's just say as the night goes along, it gets really messy, and then after that's when you start questioning things. And yeah.
Okay, cool. All right. All right. So you spent, like you said, 10 years in the army, and you've also spent quite a good time also in education as well, in the army as well. So what was your role? What was your role throughout your time in the army?
So as I mentioned, I joined as a infantry soldier, which is frontline,
Yeah.
like a frontline soldier, so combat soldier.
Yeah.
But throughout my career, I had several different roles. So everyone, as an infantry soldier, everyone starts as a rifleman.
Yeah.
But as you go along your career, it's all down to your performance, and and a lot to do with your mindset as well.
Yeah.
You do have opportunities to specialize in different areas. So some specializations might be mortars. So like the guys that throw kind of like the guys that drop bombs, or you got machine guns, you got anti-tanks, you got snipers. So after a year and a half, I was given the opportunity to become a reconnaissance operator, which is practically like the guys that push forward in front of the battalion.
Right.
And they're the guys that find the enemy. And once they find the enemy, they conduct the analysis, and then they kind of create the strategies to, in essence, go and fight that enemy. So that was my role for about a year and a half, and then I was fortunate enough to be given the opportunity to become a sniper.
Yeah.
And then I was a sniper for 2 years. During that period, I also had the opportunity to specialize in physical training, which has always been kind of like my hobby and my passion. I've always loved fitness, and that was about 3 years into my career. And then so I was kind of like dual role. So like in the first part of the day, I was a physical training instructor, and I would take out the guys on runs and circuits and physical training. And then from kind of like 11:30 onwards, I will go and do all kind of like my infantry training. So I'll go and do like the training on radios, on tactics, on navigation, fieldcraft, different things, depending on the tasks or the operations that were upcoming. That's the stuff that you normally train for on a day-to-day basis. And then around the 7-year point, I was then selected to become an instructor at a training establishment. So a training establishment is where recruits get trained. So, as I mentioned earlier, I went and done my training at the Infantry Training Centre in Catterick.
Yeah.
But I went as an instructor to the Army Foundation College, which is in Harrogate, and that's also in North Yorkshire.
Yeah.
And I went and trained junior recruits. So that was kind of my first insight into working with young people, working with 16 to 18-year-olds, which was a fantastic experience.
Mm-hmm. Were you always based out? Where did you spend most of your time once you were throughout the May, like when you were an infantry soldier?
Yeah. It was. I had quite a busy period. So the first 6 months, I was based in London in Hounslow.
Yeah.
But actually, out of those 6 months, I spent 4 months doing all my driver training in a place called Leckensfield, in the Defence School of Transport. So I got pretty much every license under the moon.
Yeah.
Learned how to drive pretty much everything, and then I went to Germany for 2 years. So I went to a place called Celle, which is about half hour away from Hanover. Hanover's was the nearest city to where we were.
Mm-hmm.
I spent 2 years in Germany, and then after that I went to Cyprus for 4 years. I went to a place called Decalia, which is near Larnaca.
Mm-hmm.
And then after that I moved to Harrogate, and then from Harrogate that's where I kind of finished. That's where I finished my career.
Mm-hmm.
So it was quite busy. Obviously, in between that, there's a lot of traveling involved. That's one of the perks of a career in the British Army, is the fact that you get so many opportunities to travel around the world and see amazing things. I went to Africa, to Kenya, done training out there, done training out in Jordan in the deserts.
Mm-hmm.
Done training in Poland, Arctic training in the jungle in Belize.
Mm-hmm.
I definitely got around quite a lot.
Yeah.
Very, very fortunate to have all those experiences as well.
Good mix of countries, and I'm guessing of just things you've experienced really. I've got actually some questions. Like I mentioned, we've got quite a few. There was a lot of interest when we mentioned that you were coming on.
Sure.
So we had a lot of questions. So I'm just going to start off with some of these questions. So one of the questions we've got in is, have you ever been deployed, and if so, where?
I got deployed to Afghanistan in 2012 and 2013.
Yeah.
The role I went under was a theatre reserve.
Yeah.
Which is was quite fortunate looking at it in hindsight now, because it wasn't a full tour. It was just more like a support tour. So we went out there and supported the guys that were doing kind of a relief in place. So that's where one unit is looking to leave after the end of their 6-month tour, and a new unit is looking to take over, and we just kind of go and bolster the defense force to help them make that handover takeover happen. Then in 2015, when the whole ISIS and the Iraq situation kicked off, I deployed to Iraq, but that wasn't in a fighting role. That was more in a training role. So we're training the Peshmerga forces and the Iraqi forces to deal with the situation that was unfolding at that time. So those were kind of like my two operational tours. There are other kind of commitments but they kind of more fall under like training, which had involved different kind of roles and tasks.
And so out of the two, which would you say was like your favorite, and why was that your favorite?
I would say Iraq probably was. I can't say that there was a favorite. They both had their kind of pros and cons. I mean, in Afghan, by the time I went out and in the role I went out, I didn't actually get to do much fighting, which is one of the things that um, I wanted to do because of all the training you do. Everything you train for and you build up for is to go and do the war fighting. And
Yeah.
the role I went in didn't give me that opportunity. So I felt that was quite disappointing. I felt very frustrated at the fact that I wasn't able to do the exciting part. But looking at it back now in hindsight and seeing some of my friends that did go out there in war fighting and done some war fighting, and and the impact and the effects that has had on them, I count myself very fortunate now. Iraq was very different. Iraq, we were just training people, so it was a lot more like mentoring and a lot more, establishing a lot more rapport with the foreign forces, and it was a more kind of it was a more enjoyable kind of role and task that we done out there. So yeah, I'll probably say Iraq was a bit better.
Okay. So continuing with the questions we've got.
Yeah, sure.
We've got, like I said, quite a few, so you're just gonna have to bear
Yeah,
with me.
yeah, that's fine.
So we've got a question here which says, where do you think there will be conflict soon?
I mean, I only got up to corporal, so I'm like at the very, bottom of the food chain in the military sense. So for me to predict something like that would be, I'm not in a position to say, but definitely, there's so much potential. I mean, the Middle East is always going to be an active region.
Yeah.
Africa is obviously another region that's very active. It will be out of one of those two regions. I mean, looking beyond that, you see other tensions, in other places. You've always had that kind of like the Russia China kind of tensions and that, but I mean, it's just those I can't see something like that ever, going to an extreme where I would say, there would be a war, because that would literally, mean pretty much the end of the world at that point. So I think, maybe, yeah, definitely Middle East will be ongoing, Africa will be ongoing. Those are probably the two regions that, there will be military operations going on, not necessarily war fighting. I think, for the foreseeable future, it would be like mentorship roles, training other armies, other forces to kind of help them kind of maintain stability in those regions. So, as far as that's as much as I know, but yeah, I think, when you talk about wars, probably very, it's way above my pay grade if you want to put it that way.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So we've got another question, which is, do you keep up regularly with the news in terms of war? And if so, what were your opinions on the recent Russian ships circulating nearby?
I tend, since I left the military, I tend not to, be too focused on kind of like, like wars and kind of like conflicts and tensions. I try to now lead a life where I believe in kind of having a positive impact on the world. And to be honest with you, I don't believe that war achieves that positive impact. So I don't tend to be very well informed on kind of like situations where, for example, like, right, look, military intelligence is always going to be ongoing, because that's just the nature of the beast. So Russians will test waters as well as, will test their waters, and it's just constantly kind of, poking and probing to see reactions, to see, what happens, and they're constantly testing each other. So that's always going to be going on. as I said, I'm now more focused on adding value
Yeah.
to as many people as I can. So by me searching for that kind of information, I don't believe that that's something that kind of helps me in that aspiration, in that kind of mission.
Okay.
So I'm sorry for whoever asked the question, but I can't really put good input into that one.
Yeah, that's fine. So we've got another one. How useful are languages in the army?
Very, very useful. Obviously, there are languages that open up a lot more doors than others. Obviously, I'm a fluent Spanish speaker.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, the British Army doesn't have a lot of vested interest in South America or in Spanish-speaking regions. However, if you speak, Russian or Arabic or those kind of languages that are used predominantly in the Middle East or the Eastern Europe, or even now languages like French. French is one of the languages that will open up a lot of doors because of the commitments and the involvements in Africa. Portuguese as well. So, but yeah, French predominantly now is one of the main languages that the British Army is looking for. But yeah, definitely, if you've got languages, it does open up it does open up doors for opportunities and for some tasks that other people that don't have those languages might not get. So yeah, definitely an advantage.
Yeah. So we got another one here which says, "What was your day-to-day like?"
Day to day. So every day you do something called a parade. So a parade is where you turn up and you line up outside your company offices in your three ranks, in your three files.
Yeah.
And then the day always starts off with fitness. You turn up at 6 in the morning, and fitness could be anything from going out for a run to doing a circuit to doing weightlifting to doing kind of like military style training, like carrying heavy objects and obstacle courses and things like that. It's very, very diverse, the fitness that you do. You've got sports in all that as well. So after fitness, fitness tends to be from 6 till 7:30. Then you get given an hour and a half for shower and breakfast, and then at 9 o'clock you report back for parade, and then from 9 through to lunchtime you'll do kind of, more often than not, it's kind of like lesson based training, so like your theory side, and then the afternoon tends to be more like your practical training, and then you normally finish around 4:30, 5. At 5 o'clock you parade again. Your sergeant major comes out, kind of briefs you on any upcoming training or any courses that are going, or anything that's relevant. And then you finish your day. Then if you're married, you go home. So if you're married, you live in a married quarters. So married quarters is practically like, if you imagine like an estate of houses, and all the married soldiers live there with their families. But if you're single, you live inside camp in dorms. So the best way to describe it, imagine a uni dorm room, and then just go and chill out, in your wherever it is that you find yourself living, and that's a day to day, pretty much.
Okay, cool. So another one we've got is, tell me a story that was really unique to your experience in the army, and something that you remember that has stuck with you, something experience that has stuck with you and hasn't, that you always remember. It's quite impacting.
Okay, so I mean, I do have a story, and it's probably something that impacted me at every single level. I mean, it impacted me, I would say, even psychologically and emotionally. And it was the day I actually graduated from training. I remember we were all in this kind of like bar area, this lounge, and all the families were there. And I remember my platoon commander. he called me over to one side, and at this point my dad had drove up with my girlfriend and my daughter and my brother.
Yeah.
And when you graduate, obviously you invite family to see you graduate and pass out. So I'm sitting there with my family, and my platoon commander comes over and kind of calls me over to one side, and I thought I was going to get congratulated. I thought he was going to say, look, it's been a tough journey, well done, you made it. But what he actually said to me was something that really, really impacted me. So what he actually said was, you know what, this was his actual words. He said, Lopez, you know what, you should never be leaving this place. He said, you got to be one of the worst recruits I've ever seen come through this place. And to be honest with you, if you go to battalion with the same attitude and the same behavior and the same effort that you've put into here, your life's going to be hell.
Yeah.
And I remember just thinking, wow, I was so thrown back. And I remember looking to the one side, and my dad and my girlfriend, my brother, they were kind of looking at me so proud. And they believed that I was being told something positive. But I think that was one of the first times in my life, and it was one of the most impacting things that anyone ever said to me, because at that point, I literally told myself, I am going to do everything within my power to prove this guy wrong.
Yeah.
And after that, I remember, when I turned up to battalion, I remember I used to run every single day. I used to, the thing is, in training, I wasn't very fit, and I didn't understand a lot of what I was being taught. Yeah. And I'll be honest with you, I did struggle quite a lot, as I already mentioned earlier. The mindset I had was totally opposite of the mindset that was expected. So when I did turn up to battalion, I remember, I run daily, and I started running like 4 miles and 5 miles and 6, until I started running like 10 miles. And I used to run every single day. I used to train every single day. Yeah. I will read up as much as I can, military knowledge, and try to understand, the drills and the procedures that I had to learn as a basic soldier. Yeah. And, that conversation that I had with those words that he told me really and truly were like the biggest motivation I ever got in my life. Yeah. And it was off the back of that I went on to have the career I had, and I specialized in the things I did, which are quite it's quite challenging to specialize in some of the things I did, because of the level of resilience and persistence and determination that you got to display to be able to pass these courses, especially to become a sniper. That was something that it was one of the highlights of my career. Promoting, becoming a section commander and leading men was also a highlight in my career. But yeah, I would say that's probably one of the stories that stuck with me the most. And even to this day, sometimes when I go through those periods of down periods, and I'm just kind of like not motivated, and just low moments, I remember back to that day, to that afternoon, and just kind of like I just can't allow myself to fail. And that's the way I kind of took that. I cannot fail. Whenever I think of a challenge, I just I'll overcome it. I don't care how it's going to happen or what it's going to take, but I will overcome it. So yeah, that's definitely one of the most impacting stories from my time in the army, definitely.
Yeah, I think it's definitely a very, very impacting. And I can see, I think those are the moments where people are either made or broken. You either take something positive from, or try and do something positive from it, or it crushes you. And obviously, in your case, it pushed you for better, and you went on to succeed and to become much more than what he obviously expected, but more than that for yourself, because that's ultimately what's important, what you ended up doing for yourself and for your family as well.
Yeah, and I think the way that scenario unfolded, and the fact that the people that mattered to me in my life, like my girlfriend, my daughter, my dad, my brother, and the fact that they were there, and the way they looked at me, I I think that was the real impacting part, because I thought I cannot let these people down.
Yeah, yeah,
And you know, they're the people I love. They're the people that stood by me through everything. So whatever happens, I can't let them down. And as you said, yeah, it kind of helped me a lot.
Mhm.
Definitely helped me a lot.
Yeah. Well, congratulations, Juan,
Thanks,
honestly,
man.
for getting through that, and for also keeping composure, I guess, in that situation as well.
Oh, trust me, my blood boiled. but by then I'd already learned discipline and respect. So
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah. Okay, so we've got a final question, which is,
Yeah.
I'm interested. I'm interested in asking about masculinity and if men need to be macho to succeed.
Look, I would say at a younger age, my answer would have been very different to the answer I'm going to give now.
Mhm.
But you know, for a man to succeed, knowing what I know now, no, you don't need to be macho. However, you do need to be centered.
Yeah.
So being centered doesn't mean you have to be macho and, you know, and like, you know, this brute, and, you know, everything's forceful and everything's aggression and, you know, absolute kind of, you know, just dominance. It's, you know, being centered is about understanding your emotions, understanding what you're feeling,
Mhm.
why you're feeling it, and and then and then it's actually to intelligently manage those emotions. So it's having that emotional intelligence, that composure, that, you know, when you're faced with a challenge, when you're faced with a difficulty, is being able to compose yourself and be centered and actually not react on emotion, taking that step back and actually just giving yourself that opportunity to think and to make an informed decision. So
Mhm.
in order to make an informed decision, you must understand what's going on. You must, first of all, you know, be in touch with yourself, and then is to intelligently ask yourself questions about what it is that you want.
Mhm.
You know, in terms of, you know, what's the outcome you're seeking? What's your ultimate goal? What's your aim? What do you stand for? What are your values?
Mhm.
What are your beliefs? And, you know, when you're able to do that, when you're able to actually, you know, control yourself and intelligently manage your emotions and then make informed decisions, you'll find that, you know, you are able to move forward
Mhm.
towards what you want and what you're trying to achieve
Mhm.
in a much more natural and harmonious way.
Yeah.
and and you end up achieving a lot more. You end up actually really and truly achieving your goals, achieving your aspirations. And if you're achieving your goals, if you're fulfilling your aspirations, that's success.
Mhm.
So that's what I've come to learn now
Yeah.
through everything I've experienced, everything I've learned. That's what I've come to learn now. And, you know, then the real question is what does success mean to you? Because I mean, you know, as an individual, you know, some people might believe success is maybe, you know, if you're a creative person, it might be producing music or producing art.
Yeah.
But if you're someone that's more like, you know, people orientated, success might mean helping other people.
Yeah.
If you're someone physical, it might be, you know, competing in sports or in some type of, you know, competition. And then whatever your success is defining it, and then moving towards, you know, realizing that vision and that kind of picture. So no, you don't need to be macho. As a matter of fact, you need to be very aware of what you're feeling and not ignore it, because ignoring it can sometimes cause you to, you know, get lost, and sometimes you know, it prevents you from reaching the success that you want to achieve. So that's a great question. That's a great question. But yeah, that's kind of what I believe in
Yeah.
now.
Yeah.
Definitely.
If you could go back in time, would you go through it all again? Or any changes?
No, 100%. I will go through every single thing I've gone through.
Mhm.
You know, I'm so grateful every day I wake up, and I'm so grateful to have had the opportunity to go through what I've gone through, and to be fortunate
Yeah.
to have been able to change my life around the way I did. Because I come back when I came back to London. I was away from London for quite a while whilst I was in the army, and when I came back and I saw some of my childhood friends still in the same lifestyle, still doing the same things we used to do when we were younger. It was a it was a it was a sad moment, but it was also a very um kind of eye-opening moment. It was like almost like an epiphany kind of a moment where I thought, you know what, if life has given me this opportunity to go and do what I've done and learn what I have and everything, I must now make the most of it. So I'm very, very, very happy with everything that I've done, everything that I lived, the good things and the bad things. And yeah, if I had to do it all over again, I definitely would. Just wish I could take the knowledge I've got now and do it better. But yeah, I wouldn't change anything.
Okay, good. So Juan, just before we enter the end portion of the podcast, I also want to, because I know you're working on a project as well that you've established based on all of the experience you've obtained throughout many years, serving in the military and life experience, I'm guessing, as well. So I just want to give you the opportunity also to talk about your project and what it is you're doing and what you aim to achieve, and also how people can connect with you to know more about it.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, sure. So as I mentioned, my last role in the army was an instructor working in training junior recruits, which were 16 to 18-year-olds. And that experience, through that experience, I saw a lot of young people coming through. And a lot of these young people were young people that were in a similar position to the one that I was in when I first joined. And they were just kind of looking for a way out of, the environment and the lifestyle that they had found themselves in. And then when I left the military, I kind of started looking for a job role where I could work with more young people. And kind of my heart took me to the point where, took me to search for a job role that I could work more with young people from similar background to the one that I grew up in. So hence, like here, like the London scene and environment. And I actually found a job. I was offered the opportunity to open a military preparation college in North London, in Edgware. And at this college, I started working with more young people, but I found that I really enjoyed working with disengaged young people. So especially young people that had dropped out of school or that were involved in crime. And through this experience, working with them, especially for the last 2.5 years, I found that I really wanted to help them. And so I went on about kind of looking at what the main challenges were and the main difficulties that they were facing. And that led me to go and educate myself a lot more to be able to provide the advice and the guidance that these guys needed to be able to overcome these challenges and these difficulties, and then be able to go on to achieve their goals and get out of the lifestyles that they were caught in. And off the back of that, I was able to create a program, and this is the program that I've been working on as the project involves a program. And what I've done is I when I was a commander in the army, I learned something, a process to create strategies to achieve my missions. And that's something known as a combat estimate. And the combat estimate comprises of 7 key principles that you have to take into account to be able to understand what it is that you need to do to be able to achieve your goal. And what I've done is I extracted that process and I adapted it so that any normal person could use that same process, but to achieve a personal mission. So I've created a program called the Successful Mission System, and the word mission is an acrostic, and each letter stands for a key principle. So The M is for mindset. The I is for intention, as in your goal.
Yeah.
The S is for scenario. The other S is for situation. Influences, operation, and new lifestyle. So each of these 7 key principles ultimately allow you to understand what you need to do to be able to achieve any goal you set yourself. Now, if that goal is to find yourself work, it will give you the necessary personal tools that you need to be able to achieve that. If you want to lose weight, if you want to make more money, whatever the case is, whatever your personal mission is, this will help you achieve that. And I've now been teaching for the last year and a half. I've been going around to schools, to colleges, and even to I've been doing like one-to-one mentoring with certain young people, and the impact that this program has had has been phenomenal. And that is pretty much now what I'm dedicating myself to. I'm going around to as many places as possible and just teaching young people these tools that are essentially life skills that are essential to achieving anything you want to achieve. And these are the life skills that I myself have been so lucky to be able to have learned, and has allowed me to achieve the things I've achieved and get the things I want. And and it's off the back of that I lead the life I lead now, and I live a great life. And the young people that I've taught this to have gone on to transform their lives, have gone on to achieve the things that they set themselves out to achieve and reach their goals. So that's the project I'm doing now. So what the actual project is called My Power to Be. There's a website, so if you go to www.mypowertobe.org, you'll be able to find all the information about the project there and the programs that are available. I've got obviously my Instagram, which is _Pez, PEZ _coach. And I'm contactable through there, and then I've got my obviously Facebook and LinkedIn profile as a Juan Lopez Keep. So yeah, that's kind of my social media. But if you want more information, definitely the website is the place to go. That's where you'll be able to find out everything about the project. And if you'd like to get involved, there's also a contact form there which you can shoot a message, and then I'll be more than happy to speak with anyone that's interested or answer any questions anyone has on it.
Okay, thank you, Juan. That's I'm sure lots of people will get in contact, and like you said, they're essential skills, life skills.
Definitely.
Which, it's not necessarily about getting everything done fast way, but really nurturing the skills, developing the skills, and keeping persistent to actually achieve what you've initially set out to achieve. So yeah, I'm sure lots of people will reach out, and yeah. So we're gonna enter the final portion of the podcast today. Again, thank you for coming on. It's definitely been a really good conversation. Now, we just like to finish off with these questions. Obviously, the work we do is very much with a focus on the British Latino community in the UK. Sharing awareness, sharing stories of individuals like you, and hopefully, inspiring someone who's on the other line listening, who's sitting at home, maybe commuting, even though right now it's going to be a bit difficult to commute because of the whole COVID situation.
Yeah, of course.
But, there's a lot of people who sometimes are struggling with starting up, starting or getting out of a situation where, things may be negative, maybe there's no positive role models around, there's no past examples really of someone in the family who may have done something professionally or something in the career-wise. I know that for me that was the case when I was growing up, and it was really hard to find some sort of guidance that actually led me somewhere. What would you say to someone who's listening who finds themselves in a situation like that?
You know what? I totally relate to what you've just said.
Mm-hmm.
I was one of those young people that grew up in that situation where there wasn't no one I could really turn to um, for positive influence and advice and guidance. And if there is any person listening to the podcast, I would say, you know, define what success means to you. That's the most critical thing that you could do. And I'll be honest with you, I didn't define success until I was 25. I didn't really think about it. And it was only when I turned 25 and I thought, hold on a second, in 5 years' time, I'm going to be 30. What do I have to show for my life? And that's when it started me on this kind of like self-development journey, and it really pushed me to go on to achieve more. So that's the number one thing I would say, is define what success means to you. And number two, don't be afraid to fail. Try something, whatever you think your starting point is, and whatever you think is the only thing you can do at this point in time. And as long as that thing is something that you believe takes you closer to where you want to be, try it. And I will say one thing, failure is just a way of figuring out what doesn't work. There is no such thing as failure. What there is, though, is quitting. And that's the one thing I would say, never allow yourself to do. Never allow yourself to quit on your dream. Yes, by all means, fail a million times. Edison failed 10,000 times to make a light bulb. 10,000 failures. Wow. But, nonetheless, he never quit. And that's why we all have light today. And number three is just always look to add value and add more life in everything you do, everything, you pursue, anything that you want out of life, anything, whenever you're stuck on what to do, as long as you're adding value, you're contributing to more life, do it. Do it. It doesn't matter how stupid it is, how silly it is, how, whether everyone discourages you. I remember when I was looking to join the army, I told very few people what I was planning to do, and some of those people I did tell were very discouraging of that idea. And if I had listened to them, life wouldn't have mapped out the way it did for me. But I went and done it because it was the only option I had at that time, or I believed I had at that time. But it didn't take away nothing from no one. I wasn't harming no one. I wasn't causing no damage, and I wasn't taking away life. And believe it or not, you don't go to the army and take away life. It's very different to what people imagine. And you actually try and go out there to actually contribute towards life, to preserve more life. So those are the three things I would say to anyone listening and that find themselves in a position that's difficult. Define your success. Don't be afraid to fail, and whatever you do, add value. Look to add value and look to contribute to more life, and you can never go wrong with those three things ever.
Okay, thank you. If someone wants to join, for example, maybe someone's actually interested in joining the army, how do you go about it?
So you've go online, you go to army jobs. What I would say, though, because obviously knowing what I know now, army jobs is probably gonna take you through to the application process, and it's going to kind of take you very quickly through an application process, and then straight to an interview, and then through that whole recruitment process. If you really want to find out what opportunities are available in the army, go to the British Army homepage website, and on there's a section that says who we are. Click on there, and then that would give you a drop-down menu with pretty much all the job roles that exist in the army. Now, knowing what I know now, if I knew that there was that many job roles, you've got pretty much every job role in the civilian world exists in the army. So you've got medics, you've got IT technicians, you've got bricklayers, you've got plumbers, you've got pilots, you name it, and the job roles there.
Yeah.
So if you really want to find out what job roles and what opportunities and career paths are available, go to the British Army homepage website,
Yeah.
who we are, look at all the different kind of it's called corps and regiments,
Yeah.
and then you will get a big drop down of everything that there are, the job roles that exist in the army. And then once you've kind of seen what, something that interests you, there's engineering, there's, as I said, there's aviation, there's armored tank, there's obviously infantry, there's medic, there's even a music corps. So if you're someone that's creative and that's,
Yeah.
Musically gifted, and you want to be, you want to have a career in that, by all means, the army even caters for that. Once you've kind of then gone through that and informed yourself, then then that's when I would say, then make your, go to the army jobs website and make your application, but, make an informed decision. So that would be my advice to anyone that's wanting to join the army. Obviously, there's also the Royal Air Force, which is a service totally, different to the army, and then you've got the Royal Navy. So the Navy is all like all the guys that are at sea. The army is all land based, and the Air Force is everything in the air.
Yeah.
So you've got the three services, and all the services have, hundreds and hundreds of job roles available. And I would encourage you to visit each individual web page to find out what's available there.
Okay. Thank you, Juan. Thank you, everyone, also for listening. Juan, thank you so much for coming on. It's been a
pleasure, mate. Thank you.
It's been a pleasure to talk to you, to get to know about your story. It's eye-opening, inspiring, and impacting. I think the story that you said was impacting for you. I think I remember it for a long time. It's impacting for me as well. And I just wish you all the best. Hopefully, you manage to impact the lives of many other people with the skills you've learned. So everyone who's listening, if you want to if you want to achieve a personal goal, be it in whatever thing, it could be in fitness, careers, or whatever, don't hesitate to get in contact with Juan on his website, which is mypowertobe.org, and just make that step to achieving what success means to you. Juan, thank you so much, and it's been a pleasure to have you.
Thank you, Diego. Thank you so much. It's been great being with you and being able to share this story.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.